Even though it was now dark and the sun was about to set, it was still light enough and high in the sky to cast beautiful evening shadows over the garden. Excited murmurs discussing the twins' birth festivities had taken the place of the eerie silence that had pervaded the palace for the previous 3 months. Occupying the single sofa that was crafted in the shape of a throne seat was Darium, who sat comfortably against the soft cushion, holding onto Arsenio and ignoring the chaos around him. Beside him was Zane, who held onto Hasoslava, making silly faces at her. And for some reason she seemed to find it amusing, as she cooed and her eyes twinkled while Zane laughed. My heart was warmed by the scene that was all around me. I wanted the moment to remain frozen in time for a while since it was so lovely and heartwarming. But even though my desire is unlikely to come true, it's okay since keeping them in my mind would be more than enough. Nico and Neith were also here. They were both seated in a 2-seater. Neith went through the ball preparation with me, while Nico remained seated in his seat with an urge pout on his face, sending a glare to both Darium and Zane. He had tried taking a hold of the twins, but Darium had refused to hand over Arsenio to him. The same was true with Zane, as both men were adamant about letting go of the baby in their hold. I think this would be a perfect design for the hallway. The sound of Neith's voice had my attention shifting towards it. My trail of thoughts vanished into the air as I let go of a deep sigh and turned to look at her as she made known her ideas. "Don't you think it's quite extravagant?" I questioned her, giving her a puzzled look. "This is the celebration of the new heir. It has to be anything but simple." She stated it in a matter-of-fact tone. "Besides, my nieces and nephews deserve the best of the best. They are only 3 months old, all this doesn't matter to them. It matters to us and the people. Celebrations like this are meant to be lavish. This isn't just about the twins' birth. This is about the next heir to the throne, Arsenio. I don't wish for something this catchy. It can be simple but elegant as well." I tried reasoning with her. Throwing a party like this all in the name of celebrating the twins' birth sounded absurd. "Come on, Letitia, this isn't Neithotep," Darium calls out, halting her word. "Letitia happens to be their mother, it's her decision to make. And I think she is right, it doesn't necessarily have to be lavish, we only wish to celebrate their birth with the people, that's all." "Fine," Neith exclaimed. "But know that I won't be giving up my right to spoil the twins rotten." I laughed at this, seeing the serious look she had on, before giving her a nod. Neith began listing out other hallway decorations and ballroom designs, all sounding less extravagant but elegant. We went through so many ideas as I made little inputs on what I wanted and didn't want. "Zane! It's now my turn, let me hold Hasoslava. You've been holding her for 2 straight hours now. Don't be selfish." Neith's and my discussion was momentarily interrupted by Nico's irritated voice. Zane gazed at him, his head tilted to look like he was thinking about it, before muttering, "No, why don't you ask Darium instead?" Nico turned to look at the king, who had a huge scowl on his face as he refused to let go of Arsenio. I could almost see the flame coming out from both sides of Nico's ears. He looked as if he wanted to strangle both Zane and Darium. I bit my lower lip, suppressing the laughter from escaping my lips. Arsenio, who was wiggling on his father's arms, turned to look at Nico with his eyes wide with curiosity. "Let me hold her, Zane," Neith butted in. "I believe you need to get in line, Diomev," Nico says, sending his wife a playful glare. "Darium and Zane, I think it's time you let Neith and Nico have their turn with the twins." "What?" Etl RD. Both men yelled out with a huge scowl on their faces. "But I'm their father." Darium stated this in a matter-of-fact tone as he glared at both Neith and Nico. "And I'm their godfather." Zane inputs, getting a sound of disapproval from both Nico, Neith, and Darium. "Whoa, I could clearly feel the love." He says this, placing a hand in his chest as he feigns being hurt. Zane, hand over Hasoslava to Nico. "Neith and Nico can take turns." I said it again, leaving no room for argument, before turning to Darium with a smile. "While you, my love, continue to take care of our little prince, I love watching you with the twins." "Thank you, Etl RD," Darium says, throwing a gleeful look at both Zane, Nico, and Neith. This is so unfair. Zayn grumbles out as he finally lets go of Hasoslava and reluctantly passes her to the king's second in command. It was against his will, but he still allows Nico to hold her with a sour expression on his face. While the latter, in return, looked delighted, he had this expression as if he had won a bag full of gold and coins. I tried not to laugh at how cute they were all being. There was no doubt that the twins would be filled with a lot of love. Neith and I carried on with our conversation, making preparations for the twins' ceremonial ball that was going to be held a week from now. Once we were done, the sun had fully set. We all made our way to the dining room for our evening meal, with Zayn and Nico reluctant to part ways with the twins. But Darium was able to chase them away, or more like threaten them. Either way, it worked. Though they had only left reluctantly, Zayn made a promise to come back the next day as he planned on spending the whole day with the twins. After dinner, I returned to my chamber to freshen up, changing into my nightwear, before making my way to the room Darium had arranged for the twins and me. I walked into the room, finding him patting the twins softly as they slept peacefully in their respective cribs. With a sweet smile on my lips, I made my way towards him, hugging him from behind with my head resting on his back. The feeling of contentment filled me up.
Third person's POV.
Kaytrona despised him. She believed no one had ever despised another as much as she hated King Orin of the Hyatia, because her hatred was the purest sort, and came from the deepest part of her. He was the worst of the worst, a complete filthy man. Never in her life has she met someone so cruel and full of darkness, and never in her life has she ever thought she would be at the mercy of such a despicable man. Yet here she was. 3 months, 3 bloody months of having to put up with all this. 3 good months of lack of proper meals, but those were the trivial things. 3 months without proper food was better compared to the daily beating and abuse she had to go through. She sat on the cold, hard, dirty floor, staring at the wall in front of her, unmoving. She was on the verge of breaking, and no matter how hard she tried to hold on, each day brought her closer to lunacy. She wasn't sure what hurt the most, her bruised body or her soul. A rope was tied around her wrist, which left a red, angry bruise, adding to the one already there. But at this time, she was numbed by the pain. She had no tears left to cry or the will to scream out. It had all been futile, given the fact that that was what she did during her 2 months as a captive. Now, all she felt was void, she was too broken to care. And if ever she did escape from here, Kaytrona was certain she would never come out of it. This was going to be embedded in her for the rest of her life, if she chooses to live that long. She was too damaged to care for and too damaged to be fixed. She turned her severely bruised face, staring at the dead, rotting body laying next to her, who happens to be her companion for the last 3 months. And all she could think of was how lucky they were to have been able to escape this rat hole. Kaytrona could remember the first time she had been thrown into the dungeon. It had been too dark for her to see, yet the putrid smell lingered in the air. At that time, she didn't care much about it, but the next day, after the beginning of her nightmares, she was brought back into that very same dungeon, taking in the sight before her. The dead body was decayed beyond recognition. Flies flew over them, indicating they had been dead for a long time. The stench had burned through her lungs, and she remembered how hard she tried to hold her breath, afraid to breathe, but she did not look away. The nausea took hold when she could take it no longer, and the contents of her stomach came gushing out of her mouth. Once it started, it continued to come out. The air she was attempting to avoid breathing in had gotten out of her grasp. She emptied her body of all its contents as she lurched forward. She clenched her fist, closed her eyes, swallowing the tears, and waited for it to cease while the guards posted at the dungeon's gate mocked her pain. Kaytrona could count the number of times she had thought to end it all. But she knew she couldn't leave, not without making atonement for everything she had done. Not before seeking forgiveness from Letitia. Though she doubts her sister would ever forgive her. She had been nothing but cruel to her. It hadn't been because she hated her baby sister, it had all boiled down to the jealousy and envy she felt. Right from the beginning, she could tell the palace servant compared them. They always sang the praises of Letitia, saying her beauty was out of this world. At first, she hadn't been jealous, if anything, she was proud of it. But the more they grew, the more people began to compare them. They all sang their praises towards the king's second daughter, all telling how well behaved she was, meek, kind, gentle, and beautiful. A true making of a queen. When it came to her, she was the spoilt, bratty princess who happens to be full of herself and nowhere near her perfect sister. And Catrona hated how the people thought less of her and how easy it was for them to demean her. She had seen how little to no attention their parents gave to Letitia. They had always treated her differently, worse than the servants themselves. Yes, there were times she hated seeing her mistreated. But as soon as the jealousy began to swell in her, she joined in, making sure to demean and verbally bring her sister down. She did all this, venting her anger on her. Her dear sister, someone she had once loved and cherished, was subjected to hostility, all because she chose to let the words of others in. Now she knew, no one had the right to belittle her or make her feel small. She was her own person and was beautiful in her own way. At least she had been before everything went downhill. Catrona couldn't help but wish she had figured all this out before being captured by King Orin. Maybe then she would have gotten the chance to fall to her knees and beg for forgiveness from Letitia. She was snapped out of her thoughts when the door to her dungeon opened, and the one woman she had trusted all her life stood there looking more refreshed and elegant than ever, without anything out of place. "Get up, it's time!" Pushing her weak body off the wall, Catrona got to her feet, using the same wall as support, not to fall. Her body was too weak for her to carry alone. Her bloodshot eyes stared into the familiar set of eyes of her mother, as she made her way out of the dungeon, knowing for a fact that nothing but anguish awaited her.
Third persons as POV.
Letitia was still sound asleep in bed in the wee hours of the morning, which was logical given that she had spent the entire night caring for both Arsenio and Hasislava. As they got ready for the twins' formal ball this evening, the staff in the palace could be heard working furiously. The palace servants flitted back and forth as they completed the chores given to them. Inside the huge ballroom were hundreds of round tables and many seats, all nicely organized. To provide the appropriate lighting for the space, enormous chandeliers were already mounted above the ceiling. The servants' voices alerted Darium, who was monitoring the arrangements, that a visitor had arrived, jolting him out of his trance. His temples were becoming increasingly creased. But the frown that had darkened his face evaporated as he realized who it was. It was replaced by a broad, friendly smile that lit up his "Yes. Bring the King of Hades to my chancery," he told the servant, moving towards the direction of his chancery. Once inside, he settled into his comfy leather chair. Moments later, the door flung open, and his visitor slipped inside. "Darium, it's a delight to see you back in health." "I feel the same way as well." The Nisha King responded with a smile across his face. With a nudge of his head, he directed the young king to a seat opposite him, and Devlin occupied the comfy leather chair across his wooden table. "How has it been since the acquisition of the throne?" "In all honesty, the people seemed not to mind, although I did have some opposing parties who were associated with my father, but I was able to manage them," he replied, his brows creased together. "Everything seems to be going greatly. Well then, do you look frustrated?" The young prince sighed with an apprehensive look. "Well, King Leandros had almost left the kingdom in ruins with his lavish spending and the like, and though I was able to save us from any form of loss, it had taken nearly 2 months of sleepless nights to do so. Not that I'm complaining, I knew I had my work cut out for me when I made a plan to take over the throne. I just didn't think it was going to be this bad, not adding the fact that..." Darium couldn't help but notice how the new King of Hades avoided calling the late King of Hades by his parental title but instead chose to use his name. He thought back to 3 months ago, right before he was stabbed, when Leandros made a statement about him being betrayed by his son, and the young prince's response still lingered in his mind. Was there more to the story? Was the young prince keeping a secret, one he was certain Letitia had no idea of? He snapped out of his thought, returning his focus back on the young king, only to find him in deep thoughts of his own. "What seems to trouble you even more?" Darium questioned him, taking in the apprehensive look on Devlin's face. "In addition to looking for Gala's family, anytime it seems we are making progress, with just a blink of an eye, it becomes futile. The last time we got a trace of them, they had been found close to Hyatia." "Hyatia?" "Yes." Devlin answered distraughtly. "This worries me even more, knowing the kind of person King Orin is. It's not like we can barge into his territory and demand searching for them there." "I will have that handled," Darium stated. "I know someone who can get us covered with that. We can find out if they truly are in Hyatia." "That would be very helpful." The young king says it with a sigh. "How are Letitia and the twins?" Devlin asked, changing the subject, and though Darium was certain that his worry was more than just the missing family of Letitia's handmaid. There was no doubt that something else was going on now, but he decided not to prod for now. Today was the celebration of the twins' birth. He didn't want to be bothered about the affairs of the kingdom or anything else. They could all wait until the next day. Coming out of his thoughts, he gave an answer to the young king's question with a smile on his face. Both are still fast asleep. I guess I would have to check in on them later. I, too, am tired. I had to ride through the morning and nights without resting to get here early. Why don't I walk you to your resting chamber? That would be very kind of you, Devlin says, as they both got up to their feet, making their way out of the chancery and towards the direction of the room the young king usually stayed in during his visit to the palace. Forgive my manners, how is your wife, Minerva? Darium asked, watching as the smile graced the face of the king of the Hades and his eyes twinkled with love and adoration. She is fine and sends her regret for not being able to make it. Now that she is pregnant with a child, the healer has advised her to take proper rest and avoid doing anything demanding. I'm afraid her pregnancy is one of those that is quite daring. I'm sure you will scale through it all. I truly hope, by the heavens, we do.
Letitia's POV.
With Kiva here to help, I was getting ready for the twins' ceremonial ball. I had to cling onto the bedpost as she carefully pulled the corset strings to tighten it around my waist while she was helping me. Where are the twins? I asked, all the while struggling to hold my breath. Kiva answered, but her eyes were on the corset and she was fumbling with the strings. Lord Balthazar had taken them just an hour ago, after Kiera, their nursemaid, helped get them ready. Kiva tugged the corset strings quickly as she tightened it, almost choking em, making me gasp out in shock. Easy, Kiva, I might have chosen to wear this, but I sure do plan on staying alive and wish for you not to smother me to death. Sorry, milady, I'm just not used to dresses like this. Her voice was panicky, and her fingers moved fast. Will milady be able to survive through the night, having to wear this for hours? I might be, if you choose not to tighten it too much, blocking out my air supply. I said it again when I felt it tighten even more from behind me. Kiva gave me a sheepish smile, letting out yet another apology, as she loosened the corset and brought the dress, which had been neatly placed on the bed. This is truly beautiful, milady, she said, her eyes twinkling at the dress. His Majesty sure knows how to pick the best for you. Tell me about it. I was stunned as well when I saw the dress. Kiva helped me into the dress, making it fit perfectly on me before. Milady looks absolutely stunning, she said, grinning from ear to ear. Do you wish for me to do your hair as well? I will very much like that, if you don't mind. She got right into work, helping me with my hair, which carried on for nearly 5 minutes. Finally done, I hope milady is pleased with her look. I stood up from my chair and examined other accessories. With the dress on, I proceeded to put on the jewelry and the shoes that came with it. If the dress and jewels had been bulky, I would not have liked them, but they were elegantly ornamented. I moved to the mirror and took a good look at myself. I was speechless with amazement as I let out a gasp. Kiva, this is perfect, I whispered out, breathless and still stunned. In front of the full-length mirror, I almost didn't recognize the woman who was looking back at me directly. I pushed her in my direction, and she followed. I finally allowed the incredible metamorphosis to sink in as I made a swift, beautiful spin, and she followed suit. Kiva secured the high bun with pin and wafer my face, nearly outshining the gold crown that was proudly perched on top of my head. A little part of my hair covered the pins, keeping the rest of my hair in place. My hair was already far too long, but this hairdo greatly improved its appearance. I keep looking at my image with wide, shocked eyes. Kiva also decided to powder my face and somewhat highlight my features, and I must say that she did a fantastic job. The long dress fit like a second skin, hugging all of my curves. The stunning golden hue stood up dramatically against my pale skin. The skirt and sleeves were the ideal length, as if they had been tailored especially for me. The color wasn't garish at all, rather, it complemented my blue eyes. The dress appeared to be just right, and I applaud Darium for picking out yet another masterpiece. I finished getting ready and then looked in the mirror one last time, before dismissing Kiva and told her to do the same. I wanted her to be a part of the ceremony. The door to the chamber pulls open, and Darium walks in. His gaze rested on mine, and I watched as they slowly made their way down my body and back up, in a slow, teasing, and tantalizing manner. The look in his eyes made me weak in the knees. His lips raised up in a smile as his deep voice reverberated from around the room. "You look beautiful today, Etlardi." Our eyes met, and he held so much fire in his that I felt I might burn from the amount of desire, yet I couldn't keep myself from staring deep into them. He walks towards me, taking a hold of my hand in his before bringing it up to his lips and placing a lingering kiss at the back of it. His eyes never once wavered from mine, and I was more than certain I had already turned scarlet red. "You are truly beautiful. I'm very much certain no one could ever top your beauty, not in the whole of Nisha or other tribes to come." He says this, kissing my palm again, and my face continues to grow more hot at his words. I felt myself beginning to grow shy as his eyes stayed on mine. I mean, this was a man I had been married to for nearly 2 years now, a man who had seen every bit of me and who also happened to father my children. Yet, despite everything, he still managed to make me feel giddy, with swamps of butterflies swimming at the pit of my stomach. "Stop staring at my face," I said, looking down away from the intensity of his gaze. Darium's hand came down to cut my jaw, using it to raise my head up, so his eye met mine again. "It's hard to stop looking at you, Etlardi. Not when you look this enchanting." He was, without a doubt, the biggest and most shameless flirt I had met. Not that I minded, hearing his sweet words did nothing but boost my self-confidence. He truly did know how to make me feel beautiful and special. If anything, he was the first person to ever make me feel this way. "We better get going, we don't want to keep the guest waiting," Darium says, breaking whatever trance we were in. And I blinked my eyes, not realizing I had been staring into his for quite some time. The smile stretched even more on his handsome face as he leaned in, pecking my forehead, before wrapping his arm around my waist, and we both began making our way out of our chamber and towards the direction of the ballroom. When we got to the hall of the ballroom, I was able to take in the sight of the beautiful roses, which decorated the floors and walls leading to the ballroom. I must say, Neith truly outdid herself. She kept to my suggestion, making everything simple yet managing to look elegant and graceful. "Shall we?" Darium asks, looking down lovingly at me. Taking in a deep breath, and with a smile across my face, I gave him a nod as the door to the ballroom pulled open.
Third person's POV.
She stood at an excluded path in the ballroom, taking in how beautifully decorated it was, with a series of rosy flowers adorning the walls and table, and her hand clenched tightly, hating the fact that they were all gathered here just to celebrate the birth of the Ahades princess bastard. Irrespective of what others said, they were not heirs to the throne. If anything, they were nothing but filth carried by a low-class woman who was undeserving of the throne and power given to her. Her hand clenched tightly to the drink, holding onto it till it shattered into pieces and the blood dripped down her hand, falling into the decorated ballroom floor. And yet no one noticed. Everyone seemed to have their focus on the king and queen as they both walked in, with the Ahades princess acting grandiose and full of herself, all the while fooling the people with her innocent smile, just like she fooled the king. She hated every bit of it, and she hated the way the people dotted at her and sang her praise. She hated having to pretend constantly in front of her, having to put on a fake smile not to get found out. It was becoming depleting, and if she had gotten the chance to get rid of her months ago, during the king's unconscious state, she would have gladly done so, putting an end to the misery she had to face dealing with the likes of hers. But it wasn't possible, not with so many people keeping watchful eyes on her. Despite being so close to the Ahades princess, she couldn't do anything and instead watched as the 3 months passed without achieving anything. And now the king was awake, making it 10 times more impossible to attack. But she wasn't one to give up, she knew when to keep low. If she had to go through the torture of pretending to care about the Ahades princess, then so be it. But now, she would do anything in her power to ruin her family, starting with her dear mother and sister. The former queen of Ahades, Afra, and the princess Katrona. Those two had been fools to think they could seek alliance with the Hayatia. They didn't realize how they had handed themselves on a silver platter, straight into their arms. And though she had asked King Oren to keep them alive, she wasn't certain what she wanted to do with them, but now she wished nothing but their death. At least it would ease a bit of her anger. The woman remained hidden. In her spot, she watched as the so-called Queen of Nisha danced with her brother, who was yet another eyesore. She couldn't help but blame the king for this and his decision to marry into the Ehades royal family, bringing such uncleanliness into their kingdom. They were far too good for them, they should have never mingled with their likes. Now here they were, thinking they were equals with them. The audacity. She carried on watching the so-called Queen of Nisha with so much hate and distaste. She watched as her eyes wandered around the ballroom, settling on her, and her brows raised up, a bit amused by this. She knew for a fact that the Ehades princess couldn't get a proper glance at her, not when she was far away from the light. She could see the curiosity in Nisha's queen's eyes, yet she has never wavered, putting every fury and hate she could muster on them. The Nisha's so-called queen attention shifted from her to her brother, who seemed to be muttering something, and she watched her laugh, loathing the fact that she was this happy. Taking a gulp of her drink, she moved away from the dark, walking around the ballroom, mingling with the crowd, her gaze still on the queen, whose eyes shifted to where she once stood, her brows furrowed. And the smirk grew in the woman's face at this. She took yet another glass of drink from the tray of the servant, making her way to the dance floor just as the king began making his way to the Ehades filth, who still had attention shifting around the room, still in search of her. She walked past the so-called queen just as the king got to her. Her drink rose up to her lips as she gave them a nod and a smile, getting one from the Ehades princess in return. The woman struggled to hold back her laughter, knowing how gullible the Ehades princess was. She could very well have her fun, because it won't last forever.
Letitia's POV.
The party was in full swing, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Some of the royal families from different tribes who were free to attend were here, coming along with a series of gifts and congratulations. I turned in the direction of where Neith, Zane, and Nico stood chatting with some of the royal family. Neith, who had caught my stare, sent a wink my way, making me laugh. My gaze then shifted to Kiera, the twins' nursemaid, who stood at the far end of the room with another maid who assisted in carrying the twins. At least that was what the people thought. Arsenio and Hasoslava were nowhere near the ballroom. I didn't want them here, crowded with a lot of people, not sure if they were a threat nearby. It was better to be safe than sorry. The twins were back up on the floor of Darium's and my chamber, in the nursery he had made for them. They were being cared for by Alvar and a maid Zane had brought from Silvio, who in reality happened to be a female warrior. I wasn't sure what Zane and her story were for her to tag along with him, but I knew there was more to it than meets the eye, and maybe the young lord of Silvio might actually settle down. But my fingers were crossed on that one, I might actually be overthinking things. Anyway, the twins were safe and far from the ballroom, and to heighten the security, I had Gareth stay behind with 2 more men, not to draw too much attention there, but to protect the twins at the same time. No one, absolutely no one, could go up the hallway of Darium and my chamber without passing through the guards. And only a few people knew about the twins being absent at the ballroom, except for Zane, Darium, me, and the twins' nursemaid. The rest were absolutely clueless. I was startled out of my train of thought by a wave of unease. My shoulders were being scrutinized, and I could feel it. I made an effort to block out the strange feeling, but it only made me feel worse. The instant Darium and I entered the ballroom, all eyes were on us. From the start, I could sense someone's intentions, and they were not good. It had an almost ominous and dismal feel to it. Things had been quiet after Darium fell into unconsciousness. There hadn't been any suspicious activity or any progress in Gala's death. It was like the culprit vanished into thin air. Devlin and Nico both think that whoever did it must have snuck out of the kingdom, and with the tightened security, they haven't had the chance to sneak back in. But Darium seems to think otherwise. He thinks that he or she was just lying low, knowing that striking at that moment would mean getting exposed. And he thinks the culprit is still in the palace. Their not acting feels all the more suspicious since they have no idea what he or she is planning, but we need to be careful. Shaking the thoughts off my head, this was the celebration of the twins' birth. This happens to be a joyous occasion, and I didn't want any negative thoughts ruining it. Putting on a smile on my face, I turned to greet the people who had walked up to me, wishing me congratulations while at the same time showing them my appreciation. The night carried on with a lot of celebration, and at some point during the course of the party, Darium and I separated. Care for a dance? Devlin's voice had me turning in his direction. A huge grin was spread across his face as he gazed down lovingly at me. It will be my pleasure, my king, I replied, grinning back. As he led the two of us to the dance floor, I put my hand in his. We started dancing as the background music had a mellow tone, with his hand on my back and mine on his. With increasing anxiety, my wandering eyes scanned the tightly packed crowd. When I originally expected no more than thousands guests tonight, I didn't anticipate that we would have a sea of attendees. But when I danced with Devlin, the people gathered around us and watched intently. "You look amazing tonight, dear sister," Devlin offered his customary cordial compliments. My brother was the only venture man I knew who was always composed and soft-spoken, therefore it's one of the qualities I love in him. "Thank you, and you look quite charming as well," I replied, giving him the sweetest smile I could muster, to which he responded with the same eager smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corner. "I'm glad I was able to make things right with you before it became too late. There is something I wish to discuss with you, but it can very well wait till the next day. For now, let's have a wonderful evening." Devlin's smile broadened, it was so warm and genuine, and I found my heart melting. "I'm glad you are here," I mumbled. Though curious as to what he had to say, I decided to do as he had said and leave it for another time. As Devlin and I proceeded to dance with other individuals on the dance floor, I was temporarily distracted when the music changed to another. My gaze, though, kept straying across the ballroom for some reason. The unnerving glare came back even though I thought I had forgotten about it. This time, it felt heavier. My gaze, seemingly by chance, fell upon the dimly lighted area of the ballroom. Even though I couldn't see the person standing there, I was positive that they were looking back at me. The figure stood in the excluded part of the ballroom with only a dim light, making it hard to see who it was but enough to outline the shape of a ball gown, letting me know that whoever it was happened to be a female. My brows creased, and I was very certain she knew I was looking at her, but she didn't seem to back down and kept staring right back at me. "I think I better hand you over to your husband, he seems to be giving me the death glare for having danced with you for too long." I laughed at the humor in Devlin's voice as I turned to face him. Before letting me go, he gave my cheeks a nice, gentle kiss. The woman was nowhere to be seen when I returned my focus to the corner of the room where she had been standing. I looked all across the ballroom, but I couldn't find her. She might easily blend in with the crowd and I wouldn't know who she was. I don't know how she looks or what she's wearing. As Darium swirled me to the dance floor with the superb grace of someone who frequently frequented the dance floor, the music changed once more, and this time I found myself appreciating it. As he held me, butterflies were making my tummy queasy. The room temporarily vanished into the distance. On the dance floor, there was just the two of us. Even the noise appears to have traveled far. Only his and my breathing are audible to me. Hundreds of eyes were watching me with undisguised admiration at the time, but I was at a loss for words to express how I was feeling because the situation was so unique and enchanting. I noticed that the dance had stopped after the song had finished. I was once more in the present. "Ladies and gentlemen, this toast is for the birth of my heirs, Arsenio Denarius Sviatoslavic and Hussoslavareya Sviatoslavic." Darium announced that he was raising a toast in the air. The dance floor was made available for the guests to enjoy after the toast. Although I had intended to retire early, my body eventually gave in to tiredness. "While you, Etl-RD, are coming with me," he murmurs in his sexy, sultry voice, which nearly made my eyes close.